Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and I'm so excited today to be joined by the wonderful Lil Rel Howery to talk all about his latest HBO special, I Said It, Y'all Thinking It. And I wanted to start by talking a little bit about the journey of this material in culminating into a special, because obviously, you know, it's material that you've been writing, that you've been working on, that you've been workshopping over a period of time before filming it for the special. And at the same time, it also feels incredibly timely in a lot of the things that you're discussing. So there's much more recent material in there. And so I was just interested in what the initial concept was, what the initial kind of theme and topic of the show was that you envisioned, and how closely the final version has ended up aligning with that from what you recorded.
Well, to be honest, I didn't have time to workshop anything. So I just went and did the show. That's not normal. And I usually do like to tour and work it out. But I've literally been doing back-to-back movies, and I really wanted to get this in the can. So honestly, I took a page off one of, kind of like what I usually do is like, I just show up to Chicago, go on stage and see what happens. And that is what happened. I didn't have any idea what route I was going with anything. It literally was just off the cuff and just having fun. And it's the way, like, comedy is like breathing in me. I just wanted to give Chicago a really good comedy show. I think this is the most topical I've ever been, because I didn't have time to like really dive into what I really wanted to talk about. So, it's one of those things I remember watching the first cuts because I didn't remember what I said. So it was like, oh, okay. And so that was a cool thing too, because I didn't have time to over edit it or say, oh, I can't talk about this. I probably should, whatever I say, that's why it's called I Said It, Y'all Thinking It, because it was really, here we go. So I didn't have time to workshop it for real. It was, it was just kind of like something I usually give Chicago when I've been like filming for a long time. I'm like, I just want to hit the stage. And that's what happened.
I really love that. And with that in mind, was interested in working with Ali Leroy, who's the director of the special, and kind of how in depth you ended up getting in conversations or not, because of what you were just talking about with not having very much time. Because, it visually looks really fantastic as a special. The way that the camera kind of follows you on stage is so specific. But I was interested now in what you were just saying about how much of that was just very organic and just kind of throwing everything into the room for this.
What's funny? The first show was like, we did two shows that night. It was everybody's kind of like, okay, this is where we might go. Because even with the first show, I brought two of my friends in, Frito Brown and Jay Alexander, and we went through the show. We like talked it out. He recorded a voice memo on his phone so we could listen to it again. Like, maybe I could try this again. Let's try this again. This was funny. This is that. Ali Leroy, I heard him literally. He did a podcast recently with Carrie Champion, and he was just talking about how it was like jazz doing this because he didn't know where I was going to go. So he needed to make sure he had cameras every which way, so we'll have cuts for everything. So he was saying how he couldn't even really listen to the first show. He would just watch it. So he had to like know, if I went this way, I went that way, I went that. And so it was like a beautiful dance for all of us. I think, it became one of those cool things, kind of once in a lifetime thing where you get a chance to really see what your skill set is as a comic and as a director.
That's so great. And also in watching it, I don't know if I've ever seen a comedy special where the audience are so amped up by the time that the comedian walks out on stage. And part of that's by having a musical performance with Crucial Conflict. When did you realize that that was going to be an important part of the energy that you wanted to try and create the room before you've even told the first joke? Because they're already out of their seats, dancing in the aisles, and they're so on your side by the time you even appear.
Well, it's a couple of things, right? Making those tickets free, dealing with the Chicago people. I had to buy every individual ticket because they have like outside of you renting the building, they have this deal with Ticketmaster. I'm like, and it was a big deal. HBO was like, we're not paying for that. And I was like, well, I'll pay for it out of my pocket. And so because I wanted to make the show free, I know how like when you come to a show downtown Chicago, you worried about parking, you worried about outfit. I think when I made the tickets free, people were so happy. And I just look, it was a lot of worry in there. Like nobody thought I could give away 7,000 tickets, which I'm like, Dude, I've sold like a lot of tickets in Chicago over the years. I can give away 7,000 tickets. Those tickets was going in one day. I only posted it on my Instagram, and they were gone. So the crowd came in there with this energy, and then I took a page out of Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy's book. Richard Pryor for Live in the Sunset Strip. People don't know, or maybe they do. Patti LaBelle opened that show. That's why people was just coming back to their seats. Like she just killed it. People went to the bathroom, and Richard Pryor walked on stage, which is why he do the bit about black people still in the seats. You know what I mean? And Eddie Murphy did the same thing when he did Delirious. He had the Busboys open up for him. And so I was thinking about it. I was like, yo, do I want a comic to open up, or do I just want it to be about me? And so one of my favorite rap groups is Crucial Conflict. I thought about this. I was sitting in a bar in Atlanta, like, which is weirdly, and the loud music gets my creative juices going. And I'm like, wait a minute. I shot Crucial Conflict. So I text them. And I think that's one of these specials too, is interesting. I did a lot of stuff. I kind of put my money where my mouth is. You know what I'm saying? Well, like, all right, cool. If you're not gonna, this is my budget, cool. We're going outside the budget, and whatever I need to do on my own, I do it. And it was worth it because the crowd didn't expect that. So they was on 10. So by the time the lights go out, you start hitting the rail chants. And that was another thing too. That was all like super last minute. It's like, well, who's gonna bring you on stage? I'm like, no, I want to chant. And I called my music supervisor, Marcus True Fitzgerald, is one of my good friends, who's always doing musical things for me. If it was, for my podcast or whatever I need musically, I call this brother. So that chant is his wife, his kids, and him. And he was able to do the chant, and it was like I had a vision of this in my head. And some others, my mother's, like, God rest her soul. I remember one day she was I had to be like 16, 17. And she was just like, people one day gonna chant your name. And I just never forgot that. And so this became an opportunity to make that happen. And I'm proud of how everything came together, because it was literally a vision that I had. I was at dinner with Gerard Carmichael yesterday, and we was talking about the special, and we was talking about his special. It was the first time we've had dinner, just to talk about it, like just our specials and stuff. And I think he was fascinated by that, And Gerard really was the one inspiring too, because I feel like I had writer's block for a little bit, with just like comedy just started feeling icky to me, and Rothaniel was like inspiring to like really just dive in and be whatever the comic you're gonna be. And I don't know, that's random, but I'm proud of my friends, and like these are people I can break bread with and share ideas and things like that, and able to execute something like I said it, y'all thinking.
Absolutely. And, one of the things within a lot of your comedy that you do so well is kind of knowing that balance of how much context you have to give the audience. So when you talk about the slap at the Oscars, you literally are just like, the slap, that you don't need to give them any more information than that. When you're mentioning the Brooklyn pastor who was robbed at gunpoint, that's something that some people in the audience probably knew the story. Some people have probably never heard of it. So you kind of bring them in on the surface, and then you go, and then this happened, and then this was another detail, and kind of dig deeper for the comedy. Is that something that over the years, with how much you've been doing this, is just something that feels very innate now, to know how much detail you need to give the audience and how to comedically give them that exposition, where it's not, okay, so like, here's actually the news story, but instead by giving them a narrative thread and telling a story?
I mean, that's one of the things I've loved about George Carlin. It's stuff I didn't know about that I end up researching after he talked about it. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, I think that's what makes a great comedian is, can I bring you into my world? And I have to make sure I describe it to you. One of the great things I love about my comedy is character work. So like sometimes if you don't know what happened, me reenacting it like helps a lot. You know what I'm saying? It's like, even like this with the Lean On Me bit, which was crazy last minute. I'm just happen to be an obsessed person about that. Could have happened out with no more perfect than that. Like, oh, Don't get me started about Lean on Me. I know people who've never seen the movie that went and watched it afterwards. Even with the versus battle with 3 6 Mafia and Bone Thugs, people went and watched this again. If you go on YouTube, and it's like, oh, he wasn't lying. So like, it's one of those things where like, if you describe something well enough and bring them into the make the environment come true, it's such a fun ride. I mean, honestly, this is gonna sound very crazy, but where I get that from is Muppet Babies. Used to be a show called Muppet Babies. I watched as a kid. And what I loved about that show, every episode, their imagination would just like wherever, even when you listen to the theme song, it's just talking about that. And so I've literally lived my life describing stuff because of that show.
I think that's definitely an amazing and unexpected reference, but I absolutely see what you're talking about with that, and also within your comedy as well, there's such an art into interweaving different tones, and this is a comedy show where you're making jokes about popular culture at the same time that you're talking about what it was like to have an anxiety attack and then go into therapy and conversations you've had with your therapist. And it balances and dances back and forth between those spaces so seamlessly and so well, and kind of gives the audience time to come in through the comedy before going to the more emotional spaces of the show. And kind of similarly, is that something where you sometimes with material will have a bit of an idea of how you want to create that balance and create that dance between spaces? Or, again, is that something that at this point with your writing and with performing things very off the cuff for a show like this, just really kind of comes quite naturally to you?
It comes naturally, which is it's so funny. Me and Gerard was talking about this yesterday. Like this special was just naturally me being funny. But I haven't even dived into this very personal space yet because I haven't had time to work it out. And that's gonna take me going on the road and really. So, I feel like this special was a sneak peek to what I'm gonna do next. The next one. And so funny, Gerard, I love Gerard is so honest. That's why I love Gerard. And he'll tell me, Rel, you're hysterical, but like I want to see you dive in, like with all of that. Like what is those sessions like? What have you dove into in those sessions? And it's like the only way I'm gonna be able to do that is practicing. So I don't know if I've ever really done it before, but I'm gonna take some time off from shooting movies, go on the road for like 5, 6 months, and bury myself in this honesty. So this was fun. I love this special, but this next one, I'm gonna go there, and you're gonna like see a more personal approach that probably more than I've ever done before, and I'm excited to see what that looks like.
And one of the things as well that makes this special, and I think your comedy in general, such an enjoyable interaction as an audience member, is that you allow yourself to be in on the joke. You allow yourself to laugh along with the audience. You don't laugh before they do. You allow them to take the lead. And so then when you're watching it at home, if you're laughing out loud to something, it's a group collective experience by that point. Is that something that has just always been a part of your comedy from when you first started doing shows? And was it something that you ever consciously thought about, or just something that came out one day and just felt like part of your flow?
No, it's always been a part of my flow. And it's so funny because sometimes you get like these mean tweets. He just laugh at his own jokes, it's like, but like, I'm a big Eddie Murphy fan. And like when you see like sometimes I know when I break into character or a story, I'm laughing because I'm replaying it in my head. It's like, yo, that's crazy funny. You know what I mean? Like, and so as much as I want the audience to enjoy me, I enjoy me too. And I think that's the crazy part about when I'm freestyling like I'm doing. Because I don't know where I'm going with this. And sometimes I blow my own mind, like, yo, that was funny. That's crazy. Like, just like little stuff like Brian Isley putting his beard in a box. It's like, that's insane, right? But it's so funny. I think it's something I unconsciously do, but I enjoy my comedy just as much as everybody else.
That's great. And And you also, at the beginning of the show, you talk about how the news feels like it's become too much. And obviously with everything over the last couple of years, you're like, I just want to turn on my TV and watch Golden Girls. And it kind of feels like this comedy special is giving an element of that joy and that escapism that you've been looking for yourself to the audience that are there watching it in person, watching it at home. Was that a conscious thought on your part about the tone and the kind of experience that you wanted to create, given that it was such a fast and furious process for this to come out? Or how did that essence and tone of what it is come about?
That's a great question because that exactly was my intention. I looked at it like a gift to the world. Um, I think sometimes I think comedy has gotten way too serious. And I'm like, well, the job as a comic is to make these things funny. Like, how can I take people away from what's going on? I think, the way I opened the show was letting the audience know this is what I'm about to do. I'm about to just have fun with y'all. And, you know, from a happy place, I'll say this about my special, it's happy. Like you're literally watching somebody who's decided to figure out a way to heal themselves and take care of themselves mentally and physically and all those different things. And you're seeing how happy I am. I think a lot of times, comedy comes out of tragedy and these different things, but this one is like when you think about the for real stuff, because I'm happy, that's the energy. You know what I mean? Like it's like, no, this is from a happy place. And I think when you go to the end of it, I couldn't close like I wanted to because I really wanted to take it in. Like, that's a huge accomplishment to come back home to your city and two pack shows and your name and lights at the Chicago theater and there's a line around the corner. My uncle, he was calling me from his car, like, I know you was this famous doc. It was just as beautiful. I think sometimes in our careers, we're too busy on the grind and things like that, and we don't take time to like take in how amazing some of these moments are. And that's what I decided to do. I stepped back and I couldn't even find the words to. I tried. I was so glad I didn't cry. I was like trying not to just burst into tears, but I was so proud of myself of coming from all those open mics in Chicago to being at the Chicago theater taping my second HBO special. That was surreal. It's still, even when I think about it now, I still get goosebumps about it because it's like, oh wow, and I did that while in between shooting movies. It's crazy.
And it is such a beautiful moment to just watch kind of the silence as you just step back from the microphone and you're just like you said, just taking it all in, watching the audience, after kind of just going, well, I guess I'll get out of here because it's been about an hour. It seems about right. Was that did you have did you have that intention going into the recording of, this is kind of how I think I'm going to end it? It's not going to be the traditional, building up to the larger format joke before I get out of here. It's going to be this like, okay, I think we're done and let me just enjoy this moment and take this pause. Or was the pause just something that really organically came out of what you were experiencing in the room and what the audience were giving you in that moment?
It organically came out. That particular pause is from the first taping.
Mhm.
Second taping, I was a little more together, and I was like, whatever. But that's that first one, you know, um, like I do these shows sometimes, and every once in a while, I'll look in the audience and like picture my mom sitting there, and so that's what happened. And yeah, it's I'm and also too is me thanking Chicago. I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for the city supporting me from the beginning to where I'm at now. I was a 19-year-old kid who loved stand up. And, you know, we talk about dreams coming true, but sometimes you don't know if they are. And so to literally be stepping in and living in my dream and doing something my heroes did. I mean, that's one of the great things about having Ali Leroy director's special, and that's why I dedicated to Bernie Mac. Um, I don't know. I think about that all the time. All the cats who came before me, and I always want to show them respect and love. So like if I when I got a text message from Damon Wayans, those be the texts that stick to me. Like, oh wow, Damon loves special. He gets. He sees what I'm doing. And Robert Townsend and Keenan, I look up to those guys. And so to make my heroes proud is a cool thing. And that's what all this represented to me. I just kind of want to just make something really funny.
And with what you were saying just there about, kind of reflecting and starting out as just a 19-year-old that just loved stand-up comedy and wanted to try and figure out how you could get your foot in the door and be in this world. What's the difference for you now in walking on stage for a show like this, where the audience is on your side? They're so excited to see you. They've specifically come out to see you from when you were doing shows, and you're coming in and you're doing a couple of minutes in the middle of a lineup. The audience doesn't know you yet. They don't know your material. They don't know your comedic voice, and you have such a finite amount of time to get them on your side and win them over and introduce them into your world, your voice as a comic, and the stories that you tell.
Yeah, it's so funny because you think about that when you first start comedy. Like, yeah, nobody knows who you are, so you have to come out like a fireball. Like, you know what I mean? It's like I gotta get it right away. This time around, which is why you gotta own your greatness in a way. Where it's like, I think that's what I love about the intro so much, where it's pitch black and it's just me standing in the lights at first and then walking towards the mic. I'm like, okay, I have my moment of nerves and all that stuff. Now it's time to put on a show. Who's ready for a show? Here we go. We about to, this is your cousin. This is your best friend who called you on the phone and just want to talk to you for an hour about all the random stuff going on in their life and in the world. Let's have this conversation.
It's so great. Well, it's such a wonderful special, and based off everything you were saying about the way that this material is going to inform your next show, already can't wait to see whatever you end up workshopping and coming up with for the next one. So thank you so much for talking about this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for watching, and thank you for talking to me.